Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, March 31st, 2025, and today we're going to talk about farming and retiring, climate batteries, and updates from the farm, mainly on grafting. So let's do it. All right, so happy Monday, everyone. Not the best weekend for my sports teams, not the worst, but not the best. A decent weekend for weather until the epic thunderstorms that we had last night. Kind of a mixed bag, I guess. Saturday was wildly nice, though. And that morning, I was itching to get outside and just do something, really anything, just to enjoy the weather. So I ended up planting some of the potato slips that I've been working on, that trial. I don't usually work on the weekends. I try to avoid that, but the kids didn't have soccer games this weekend, so I needed an excuse to be outside and doing something, so why not plant potatoes? But yeah, I cut those potato slips off their trays and then pushed them deep into a furrow that I dug. My idea here is to try and combat the small potato size of using the slips by burying them a little deeper and hilling them up a little bit higher as they grow. This is still an ongoing trial, of course, so we'll see, and I will keep you all updated on that. After I got those potatoes in the ground, though, we went to see our Lou City FC play up in Louisville, which is always a blast. So a nice weekend overall, and I hope you all have the same. Otherwise, I thought I would just kind of use this first segment to catch you up on what is happening here on the farm right now. I don't know, as we head into the end of March, beginning of April. Last week, I potted up and grafted the tomatoes, which I talked about. So basically, to sort of recap this process a little bit, since I last talked about it at least, I grafted the tomatoes a couple weeks ago, meaning I spliced the tomatoes I wanted to grow on top of specific rootstocks that would produce happy, healthy, productive tomato plants. That was all detailed in the show already. The goal just being plant vigor and disease resistance and something fun for me to nerd out with in March and inside on a cold day. However, after you graft them, they need some time to heal in a warm, dark place. So I moved them to a closet that houses kind of like our hot water heater and furnace. Then I misted them for several days with water and kept the humidity dome on top. Think like it's like kind of like a miniature greenhouse over top of a tray. After about 5 days, I took them from that space and moved them into our kitchen table near the window in the afternoon where they would get a taste of sunlight, but not too much. Then the next day, I left them there, still misting, and allowed them a little bit more sunlight. Then the day after that, and you can tell this is like a progression, the day after that, I put them under grow lights for like 2 days. And then finally, after that, I moved them to the greenhouse, still with a little bit of shade over top of them though, and still with that humidity dome on. So basically, I just used a large compost bag, like compost tea bag that we use. I just threw that over top for shade because it was nearby and easier than just busting out a whole piece of shade cloth for it. Then I took the humidity dome and the shade off the next day to allow them sort of just more direct sunlight. So the idea just being you want to slowly increase that sunlight. At this point, the tops are pretty well locked onto the bottoms. The scion is locked onto the rootstock, but the plants are still pretty weak and spindly from the lack of sunlight for like 10 days or so, and having just been beheaded and then shoved together. Wussies. So I gave them a couple days like that, and then I moved them into bigger pots. Although I use the soil balls for potting up sometimes, especially things like peppers, where I pot them up by literally forming a ball of soil around them. For the grafted tomatoes, I use the 4-inch soil block maker because the soil mix cannot come above the graft, or it just it kind of defeats the purpose. Like it will just allow the scion to root into the soil mix, which bypasses the benefits of the rootstock, thus making it a big waste of 10 days. Then I just set the grafted plant in its block carefully into the 4-inch soil block that I was talking about and pinched the soil around it to give it a good soil contact. Now, those will recover relatively quickly. And in fact, you can already tell there's like a difference in their color and in their happiness. And in a few weeks, like mid-April, I will plant them into the tunnel. Currently, there's a bed of spinach there from the winter that I am dragging my feet on dealing with. Probably going to be this week, theoretically. I lost 4 plants this year in the grafting process, which was slightly higher than normal. I usually lose like maybe 2 per tray, but that was basically because I accidentally pulled one of the grafts out while I was taking on and off the greenhouse, the little humidity dome. And then the others died because they were all pretty small. So I didn't really expect them to live. Small is good generally for grafting. Like, you don't want them too big because it can get a little bit hard to match up the sizes. But sometimes, I don't know, I tried to go a little bit small on these and they didn't take very well. So, lesson learned. I'll keep you up to date on that as well as the cucumbers that I'm trying to graft that I talked about. We shall see how both of those things go. Cukes are such a sensitive crop that I have my doubts that my lo-fi grafting will fly with those, but I'm going to give it a shot nonetheless. Otherwise, I've got our first vegetable orders of the season going out this week, so that is fun. It is just about to flip right into production season, just like that, after what feels like an eternity of no production, of just like cleaning and being cold. So production, here we are. Also, our editor Mike has started this week, which is very exciting. It's going to be a huge help here with this project and also a great addition to the team. So I look forward to introducing you all to Mike soon. Okay, so that's the basic stuff that I'm up to at the moment. What are things looking like in your neck of the nerds? I think that's the right way to say it. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, passive heating for greenhouses and high tunnels? Maybe. At least sort of. BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Tilth Soil. Tilth Soil is a worker-owned co-op making living soils in Cleveland, Ohio using NOP-compliant food scrap compost. They wrote us, quote, "We're stoked to support Growers Daily because healthier, tastier, and generally more decent food systems start with growers like all of you, inquiring minds who care about the land." End quote. Love the folks over there at Tilth. If you're looking for top-notch compost or potting mix, drop an email to the folks at Tilth via info@tilthsoil.com. That's info@tilthsoil.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by So Right Seeds. So Right Seeds is an heirloom seed company that offers fresh, high-quality, open-pollinated seeds. They have a great selection on their website of over 400 varieties, along with a planter's library with tips for growing. They offer cover crops and bulk packs of seed for sustainable home gardening. The instructions on the back of their packets have all the information you need to get started. Go to So Right Seeds, that's SOW, and use my discount code NOTIL for 15% off your order. That's SoRightSeeds.com. All right, enjoy the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions now. Today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Bill Price, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. Enjoying the show every day. I always have to stay at attention all the way to the end to catch the story." That's good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your efforts. It's probably a bit out of your wheelhouse, but I'm curious if you have much information on or know farms using geothermal or climate battery greenhouses. They seem almost too good to be true, but are very intriguing, providing up to 365-day production, even in extreme cold. Thanks for any info you might have, end quote. Okay, awesome, Bill. Thanks for the question. And I believe I mentioned in a previous episode how I promised to discuss climate batteries in the future with more depth. So seeing that this is technically the future, let's do that. First, what the heck even is a climate battery? What were once called SCHSs, or subterranean cooling and heating systems, and not Spencer County high schools, and are now called climate batteries, are essentially a combination of buried pipes and fans that draw heat down into the soil beneath a greenhouse or high tunnel in the warmer parts of the day, and then pump it back into the greenhouses/high tunnels at night when the temperatures outside go down. Effectively, a climate battery means using the thermal mass of the ground as a battery to store heat and then redistribute it when the air cools down. I first learned about these systems in Jerome Osentowski's book, The Forest Garden Greenhouse, where his system was enabling them to grow perennial tropical plants high up in the Rocky Mountains without heating. And I'll link that book in the show notes. It's very cool. Now, if you are not a fan of details and following exact directions, a climate battery is not going to be a project for you to take on. These systems have to be well designed and executed, or will just become a massive waste of time, money, and potentially space. They could also, if done wrong, have the opposite effect of what you want, where you actually end up cooling the growing space down instead of keeping it warm. That said, financially, they can, when done correctly in the right circumstances, save significant amounts of money on heating and enable you to have the exact microclimate in your greenhouse that you need. Now, I'm going to defer to the technical details to that book I mentioned, linked in the show notes, and also to the recent videos from Threefold's Farm Farm, which I will also link. Their site, they did an entire page on their site about these sort of climate battery systems. It's the most thorough while also being farmer-friendly info on climate batteries that I've come across. They're incredibly detailed and honest about what to expect, but also why they went this route versus other options like thermal mass, i.e. barrels of water or a big giant wall, or propane heating, or even traditional geothermal. For them, cost-wise, both upfront and time, the climate battery was the most appropriate for wanting to produce things like figs and other crops that are difficult to produce in their Pennsylvania climate consistently and at scale. A lot of times what happens when it comes to tunnels is that we often just throw a tunnel up and start growing. But I think options like a climate battery can be incredibly powerful in the right context, so long as you take the time to design it right and are yourself prepared to spend a little bit more money up front. There may be some hybridized sort of options with a climate battery and or thermal mass that could be utilized as well for solutions where a climate battery alone may not be enough or may not make sense, like in, a high water table where the water could fill the pipes and clog things up a little bit, just to use one potential example. Obviously, there are greenhouses that are buried in the ground to better utilize the ground's thermal mass, but those are not without their complications, not the least of which is just having to design and build an entire thing yourself in a way that is both structurally sound and also won't get flooded while also being effective. There are also greenhouses attached to human houses, but those have to be designed with a great amount of rigor as well, or risk losing a lot of heat in the winter while gaining too much heat in the summer. There are also options like rocket mass heaters that use wood stoves, but also require regular maintenance, i.e. loading the wood, along with other ideas in that vein. But ultimately, if you want something less stressful and hands-on and are good with taking the time to design it properly, I see climate batteries as a nifty option, and I'm delighted that people have carried these ideas forward and developed them for other climates and contexts. Composting in the tunnel is also an option, but one you have to be very careful with. I've heard more than a few stories of people losing plants to excessive gas caused by the composting process or caused in the composting process. Moreover, there can be risks to human health with composting in a greenhouse, like walking into a room filled with CO2 and methane, etc. So that is not always the best idea. So anyway, to me, a climate battery is certainly worth exploring, and I don't think so long as they are designed well, they have to be too good to be true. It just depends on how it's built. Again, follow some of the resources in the comments for more details, and then probably follow the resources that those resources give. That's how it works these days. Anyway, I hope that was a little bit helpful. Otherwise, up next, we're going to discuss retirement because farmers are weirdly bad at it, and yet it comes for us all. Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Harnwah Greenhouses. Harnwah Greenhouses has pioneered controlled environment agriculture since 1965, partnering with market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver turnkey greenhouse solutions. Their unwavering mission is to support growers' success through innovation and expertise in design, manufacturing, and installation. Harnwah Greenhouses are engineered to withstand high wind and snow loads, providing optimal brightness, increased yields, rapid ROI, and long-lasting durability. With over 20,000 projects completed, they are more than a manufacturer. They are a trusted partner. Their structures foster sustainable, energy-efficient ecosystems that drive profitable, resilient agriculture. In 2025, Harnwah is introducing a new low-tech, high-tunnel model starting at just $2 per square foot, offering open field growers an accessible entry into controlled environment agriculture. Learn more at harnwah.com. That's HARNOIS.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. Newsletters, right? A necessary evil for CSA farmers. Join Farmhand and real CSA farmers on April 11th for a free digital workshop where they'll share strategies they use to turn their newsletters into powerful sales tools. Get the secrets and go-to templates for success when you register for the free workshop today at farmhand.partners/newsletter. That's farmhand.partners/newsletter. And I'll put the link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. Okay, so something that comes up from time to time when talking to farmers or just when my back is killing me is eventual retirement. I think that most farmers want to garden and farm for the rest of their lives in some capacity, but we all need to come to a point where we don't have to farm or market garden. until we are in our 70s, or at least not so intensively. It would be nice for us all to have a plan to slow down, take the pressure off, and just enjoy being a farmer, enjoy the land, enjoy some hobbies, enjoy the grandkids, travel, fish, coach soccer, cook, tinker, or whatever it is that you do enjoy or will enjoy. But retirement, even if it's casual and you still want to work, requires planning and more specifically savings. I think it's easy to underappreciate the amount of money it actually takes to retire too, even if you don't plan on leaving your farmland. And in fact, one of the reasons I think this is such an important topic for farmers is that for a lot of farmers, selling the farm is the retirement plan, which puts people in a bind if their kids want to take over, or when they've put thousands and thousands of dollars into a property that they've just end up getting developed or torn apart by a developer. Although I won't judge anyone for taking that approach, I'm sure most of us would prefer that farms stay farms and that we don't find ourselves in a position to have to sell the farm to retire stress-freely. Yeah, that works. And to be clear, as you all can probably guess, I'm neither retired nor an expert on financial planning or retirement. And when you get serious about this, you will need to hire a certified financial planner. But I've learned some things over the last 5 or so years where I've realized how behind I was in thinking about all this stuff. So I don't have it all figured out by any means. But hopefully this will be helpful to some of you and trigger you to at least start thinking about this whole retirement phase of your life. Also, perhaps others of you will add your own thoughts and or planning tips in the comments for Friday feedback. I know we have several watchers/listeners who themselves are already retired and can add their own insight. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? What did you learn along the way? That sort of stuff. One of the things that makes farmer retirement complicated is that we can't just sign up for our company's 401k plan. We are the company. So although I have heard of farm businesses that do offer 401ks to their employees, which is awesome, most of us are small business owners who will have to do that savings on our own or start our own solo 401k program. Alternatively or cooperatively, togetherly, because having a diverse plan is an insurance. Retirement savings might be like IRAs, which you can ask your bank about these, and or small stock investments. It might be some, small real estate investment, and or it might be, and probably should be, hiring a financial advisor to help you make those decisions. But it all starts with figuring out how much you're going to want to have saved. For me, this begins with 1, picking the day, the time, the age you want to retire, and 2, envisioning what life will look like when you retire. What kind of things will you want to do? What kind of expenses will you have? Get a rough idea of those for the last 25, 30 or so years of your life, what that will cost you. It doesn't have to get too granular yet necessarily, just to get a rough idea so you can start thinking about how much it will cost you to retire. Also, a financial advisor is likely going to have you figure out what your costs are right now so you can figure out what a basic year will cost you in the future. So be doing that too. Be tracking all of your expenses in a family budget and a farm budget so those numbers are easier to estimate when you start this process. I mean, you should be doing that anyway. This shouldn't be in addition to what you're already doing, but if you're not doing that, you should start. If only just because it's good business practice. Here are some very basic financial advisor retirement rules that have been helpful for me, at least in thinking about how much to save. First, it is suggested that you should be saving 10 to 15% of your current pre-tax income. So if you earn like $70,000 gross, you should be stashing $7,000 to $10,000 per year, which I know is a lot. That's like a whole-on mortgage. One of my favorite and simultaneously least favorite things to do is put money into perspective. So at that arbitrary $70,000 income, which is notably not necessarily easy to reach, I'm just pulling a number kind of out of the ether. If you started now saving $7,000 per year for the next 25 years and could get that money to earn like 7% each year interest on average, you could have somewhere around $440,000 saved after those 25 years, which I should say is a lot. That's $500,000, or notably 0.04% of $1 billion, but that is not generally enough to retire 100%, depending on your plans and expenses. How much does one need to retire on? Well, it's generally suggested to have 10 to 12 times the amount of yearly income you make pre-retirement. So sticking with that arbitrary $70,000 per year, if that's enough for you now, then you would need at least $700,000 saved/invested going into retirement to retire completely. That would, of course, be a somewhat modest retirement, and it also depends on what age you plan to retire fully and not have any outside income. Again, these numbers can get high, but they will also be different for everyone and every family. Now, in America, Social Security may factor in for some of you and not for others. It just depends on how much you paid in and how much you will still be working at like 62, 68, those sorts of ages. Those benefits are expected to be about 85% of what they are today, like the repayment, but a financial advisor would be able to account for all of these factors. Anyway, all that to say, these can be big numbers, and they need to be taken seriously early on so they don't become a major problem in the future or just unachievable. It's kind of something I wish somebody had forced me to appreciate at like 20 or 25 years old and not wait until I was in my mid-30s before I cared. So this segment is perhaps me trying to do that for you all. I just read a survey, in fact, from New York Life that 46% of Generation X are actively planning for retirement. So less than half of the generation just before me. I'm sort of an Gen Xer / millennial cusper. And they're not prepared, which is not great. So hopefully I am sparking a little interest in this for you now, or getting you back on track with it. And I'll be the first to admit that some years we do better with this than other years. But for me, starting to think about the enormity of these numbers always puts some fire under me to care a little bit more. And not going to lie, I needed to do this segment as much as a reminder to myself as to you all. One thing we'll do is we'll take a specific income, maybe veggie sales from a specific restaurant, and just start throwing that into our retirement. Or maybe you add an outlet that's sole job is to retire you, a market or a farm store, whatever. You just take that money and immediately put it into whatever your version of a retirement plan is. But anyway, I just wanted to get the wheels turning on this particular subject because no one segment will ever adequately address something as complicated or as important as retirement plans. Especially if the goal is to keep the farm in the family, though, you will have to come up with cash to retire in other ways, and it has to be strategic. So anyway, especially with this topic, I look forward to your all's contributions in the comments section. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up there. Don't forget, we are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of March, soon April, you will get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Raven Niles. That's a great name. Raven Niles and Eric Carlberg. Eric Carlberg. That's a good name too. Those are fun. So this is clearly a novel about a duo of animators in the late 80s. And so they were kind of taking note of how popular Disney was getting, right? And they were like, okay, so these are animators, and they're like, we should start an animation company. And so they set out to start this animation company, and they'd noticed that Disney was doing a lot with talking animals, lots of talking animals. It was a talking fish, and it was a talking dogs, all these things. Talking animals was kind of their thing. So they thought, what could we make talk that would really set it off, would really break into the market? And what they kind of landed on was talking toys, which was brilliant until 1995 when Pixar released Toy Story and kind of crushed their dreams. Just the year before they could release their movie, Toy Talk. Yeah, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. That sounds good. All right, bye.